Well, thank you all for joining us this evening for a LinkedIn Live session. I'm going to introduce our esteemed guest in just a moment. My name is Lorraine Marchand, and you are joining the launch of what we're calling the Innovators Circle. And the Innovators Circle is a curated community of innovators from startups to emerging companies to growth stage to corporate icons globally of various types of industries and various companies from all around. And I have had the honor over the past year of interviewing leaders from these different companies for the second book that I'm working on. It's about innovation in organizations, and it has the working title, No Fear, No Failure. And the individuals that I've spoken with, which numbers about 75 to date, are truly leaders of change, champions of change, who have identified best practices, ways of leading change, of innovating in their organizations. And I thought, why wait until the publication of the book to share their insights and experiences with you? I've just been so excited by what I've learned that we wanted to bring it to you now. So stay tuned. By the end of the week, you will see a promotion coming out that will indicate who some of our other panelists are going to be through the end of the year. And we certainly hope that you'll join us on LinkedIn Live to hear more about their stories. I'm very proud and honored that one of the real champions of change we're welcoming this evening is Angela Mangiapane. And I had to practice quite a bit to get that beautiful Italian name right. But welcome, Angela. And I want to give you a little bit about the background of Angela. So Angela joins us from the Mars Company. And this is the Mars Company that brings you chocolate if you're a chocolate lover like I am. And also pet food and has a pet line, and which also makes it a very interesting and diverse company. And Angela will tell us a little bit more about Mars, but Angela is the president of Mars Global Services. She drives operational excellence for iconic brands like M&M's, who doesn't love M&M's, and Pedigree Dog Food. Since October 2016, she has leveraged over 30 years of diverse experience at Mars to focus on innovation and value creation. And just a little bit of a pause here. I couldn't think of anybody more appropriate to help us launch this series of innovation in large organizations than someone such as Angela, who has been innovative and driving growth and change at a company, the same company, for 30 years. So I knew that we had to talk with her about her insights and her learnings and her experiences. And I know we're going to learn a lot this evening. She leads a team of 3,000 associates across multiple functions. Angela emphasizes continuous improvement, which is aligned with Mars core principles, which she'll share with us. And previously, she was Senior Vice President of People and Organization at Mars Chocolate, overseeing talent for 17,000 employees. Angela holds a bachelor's degree in marketing and finance, an MBA from the Schulich School of Business, and has completed executive programs at various institutions. She's on a number of advisory boards and is a trustee of the Kalinga Institute, which advocates against child marriage in Africa and India, which is certainly a very noble endeavor that you're involved with, Angela. So thank you so much for joining us tonight. I really look forward to discussing the topic of innovation and change at a 113-year-old privately held company such as Mars. This is such a treat. And I'll just invite you to say a few words of your own introduction, and then we'll go into the questions that we'd like to cover this evening.
Okay, thank you so much, Lorraine, and hello, everyone. I actually feel that this is such a privilege, given that when people think about innovation, they think about startups. And so here we are with a company that's over 100 years old, but a company that's actually has grown It's doubled its business in the past 5 years. We're now a $50 billion business, which, as you said, across a number of brands that I'm sure many of you love, such as M&M's, Snickers, Twix, but as well as on the pet care side, Whiskas, Royal Canin, and then we also have vet hospitals. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention our food business, which is Ben's Original. So quite a variety of businesses, both with products and services. On my part, I'm originally from Canada. And yes, it's hard to believe that I've been with Mars as long as I have. Part of the reason that I have been at Mars is it's provided me just such a great opportunity to continue to learn and grow. So from Canada, I came to the US. I've worked in Latin America, I've worked in Europe, and I've actually also have worked across the four segments. And as you mentioned, most recently, when I say most recently, actually, it's hard to believe it's almost 8 years, really doing the reset for what we're calling Mars Global Services, which we have the typical HR, IT, finance, we have quality and food safety, we have indirect procurement. These are areas that we actually provide services across the business. It's a scale play, and we'll talk about later. Also, I also believe that it's an innovative play as well.
Yes, well, thank you for that introduction, Angela. And I was just so impressed as I was reading a little bit more about Mars' background, and a $50 billion company, 113 years old. In fact, I think that its revenues surpassed Coca-Cola not too long ago, which of course is, quite a milestone and impressive.
Yeah.
And so, like, in the spirit of studying innovation, I find this very interesting. And I've got this theory about archetypes of innovative organizations. You mentioned the startup. So we all think of a startup as being innovative and a little bit frenetic and trying a lot of different things. And if they don't work, it's okay, because they can move on to the next item. Emerging companies that are still coming out of being a startup and just starting to make revenue and figure out how to scale. And then we've got growth organizations, which have really figured out, I believe, how to create a sustainable model around innovation to continue to drive their revenue growth, their value prop, their engagement with customers. And then so many companies cross the line and become maybe what we might refer to as stodgy corporate behemoths. And they forget how to grow. They're concerned about shareholder value. Their growth sort of, plummets to single digits. And so what I think is so interesting is that nomenclature isn't necessarily chronologically oriented. So you can have a company that's 113 years old, like Mars, that can be still in its growth stage and producing new products, coming up with new ideas, continuing to please the customer, servicing new customers, which is what you have done as you've gone into some of the areas from chocolate to pet food to now pet hospitals and some of these other brands, and just really trying to understand how is it that this organization and you as a leader are able to maintain that level of innovation. So I think our first question really does need to be, how do you foster a culture of innovation in a large organization like Mars? And I know that's a huge question, and you can just tackle it from any angle that makes sense for you.
Okay, yeah. So I would start off by saying that I think Mars is very fortunate that we have a family that thinks in generations. So as you know, it's a privately held company, so we're not public, and with that comes great freedom. Because the shareholders, they're the family, and therefore they're always thinking of okay, it's money that I can go and invest in, and let's see what happens. And I think that we are today really because of that philosophy that instilled in all of us. And when I think of innovation, for me, first off, I would say it starts with curiosity. We need to instill, no matter whether you're from the top of the organization to the bottom of the organization, everybody has to think about, like, why is this happening? Can I do it better? Instill a culture of learning. I call it that. It's really important that we're not the, it's not the person who, like, I'm the know-it-all that I can come in. It's very much of who's the learn-it-all that exists in the organization. and that is always, in one sense, tinkering as well to say, what can I do here? And it really is helpful if you have the tone at the top as well. And so if I think about some of the learning programs that we have, the leadership team at the very top of the organization, they go through it. So it's not like they say we have to go through it and they just stand back. If I think about the digital education that we went through, everybody throughout Mars has given access, like they have access to it, and it's encouraged, and people know who's signed up, and so again, it's role modeling that behavior. So that would be the first one, that curiosity. The second one, and interesting enough, it also starts with a C, is communication. I do think, and that we all have to communicate with each other. And when I say communication, it's not I'm talking to you. It's very much I'm also listening. It has to, it's one of the reasons God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth, right? It's we have to listen. And for me, communication means, do I go out and look at find out what our associates, and we call our employees associates, so at Mars. So our associates at the factory, do I understand what is a typical day and what they go through? Do I go and ride with the salesperson in the car and actually see them put up a display at the local Wawas, right? For example, like Halloween now, you see all those displays. So what's going on with them? Am I going to the person that even on my own team, like the accounts payable person, and take a look and understand what he or she is going through their day? So to me, communication is part of that. Is really going deep down and understanding and listening to what everybody's going through. Because at the end, the further up you go in an organization, to your point, you tend to lose sight of what's important. So you have to remember, why are we here? And we're here to bring moments of joy for our consumers, right? Create a better world for pets. But what can we do there for? And the only way we can do it is we've got to make sure that we understand what everybody's going through. And then the third C is collaboration. And I think that's even more important today than it's ever been, because we know the world in which we live, right? Change is happening at an unprecedented state. Externally, there's factors that we haven't seen from 40 years ago, right? When you think about what's going on in the economy and how do you deal with it? Gen AI that's come in, it's replacing, if you think about coding now, the number one coding language is English. Go figure, right? That means that digital is available to all, not just the few. So this collaboration of making sure that when you're looking at a problem, you include everyone with the different disciplines that they bring to the table. And again, I have to repeat this. It's not one person knowing it all. The leader is not going to know it all. But it is creating that culture of, I'm going to bring people in with the diverse backgrounds, and collectively, we're going to come out with a better solution.
That's terrific. So we've got working backwards. We've got collaboration, we've got communication, we've got curiosity. I'm absolutely a believer in those three, and I might add a fourth C, and that is change. I think that people that think that teams that really innovate, they're able to embrace change as opposed to resisting it. And so that leads to, I think, another question I'd like to have you comment on is, so innovation is about change and growth and moving things forward. But as we all know, in a large organization, we do have to meet the numbers. We have to meet shareholder expectations. We've got our business goals and objectives. So how do you achieve that balance? How do you achieve that balance in Mars? How do you achieve that balance as an innovation leader?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And I think a lot of it stems with what is the culture that you're creating, and how do you make sure that what you don't do is only reward when things go right, and really create an experimentation culture where you're recognizing things may not go right. And how do you get people to talk about it? Because if people don't talk about it, and that's what happens a lot of times, is we're afraid to talk about things that didn't go well. And then we never learn from that, because you start to become risk averse. And to your point, Lorraine, the bigger an organization is, there are more risks, right? It's just a reality, right? You're able to take a lot more risks when you're smaller, because the stakes are smaller. As you get bigger, the stakes get higher. And therefore, you do get into this situation where people are afraid to take those risks. And so that's, as a role as a leader, you've got to create that space for them that says, it's okay, I've got you on this. And we're going to try it. And obviously, you're not going to, you start off small too. You'll say, okay, let's experiment, let's pilot. But then you have to ensure that you scale quite quickly to get the benefit of it. But if I think about, today within my team, we encourage a lot of, it's that continuous improvement. Because a lot of times people think innovation has to be a big thing. Like, what's the next big transformation? I mean, I think it's an overused word right now. Everybody's transforming. And to me, it's, I'm reminded by this Tanzanian proverb, which says, little by little, a little becomes a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, what I saw in the factories, where for decades, the factories had that continuous improvement, lean Six Sigma mindset, but you put that also into the processes. So what we do is we're essentially executing processes. Mm-hmm. So I think about how do you ensure that you're setting up a PO, a purchase order, right? And then you have to pay the supplier, or you have to process an order that comes from the customer. How do you collect the cash? And so it's looking at those work streams and going, how do I do it better? And again, you don't have to do it with all your customers. You can say, let me pick one customer, let me partner, because that's also really important, making sure you always are looking outside, partnering with a customer to say, let's experiment together with this and see what we can do. And then obviously today with technology, we do need to become all versed in technology, right? I don't believe that IT is the only one that needs to own that. I think we live in a world, I mean, all of us have one of these things, and so we have to ensure that we're continually adapting to the new technologies and going back to my first point, which is that curiosity and learning.
Yeah, and I was going to ask you, because your department, if I can call it that, is very much focused on processes and technology and innovation around, maybe we can call it incremental, right? Just better ways of working, better workflows.
Yeah.
And and how you think about that, and you really, I think, described it well. It sounds as though a lot of times they start with a pilot, start small, and then test it with a customer, and then figure out how to scale, when to scale. Is that more or less the model? And is there, like, the invoicing idea was a good one. Have there been any situations where you needed to fail fast and move something to the side and move on?
Oh, absolutely. And I would say that if we don't have enough of those, right? If we don't have those, then we're not trying hard enough. I mean, you have to be comfortable about being uncomfortable. And so to your point about, some of the initiatives that we did is exactly that. We had some challenges with a customer regarding deductions, in the consumer packaged goods, the way that the billing occurs, customers deduct. And so then you have to reconcile. And we think that's just a waste. And so therefore, yeah, exactly what you said. We partnered with a customer, and we used some very new technology. We used AI, and we saw that it actually worked for us. It worked for them. It was a win-win, and therefore we were able to say, okay, let's quickly now deploy this and scale it up. And that's the magic, right? You have to deploy it quickly to get the benefit, but then you also have to ensure that you're putting either stage gates or the metrics in place that'll tell you, hold on, something's changing here, and I've got to now do something differently. Like, never rest and say the job is done. Mm-hmm. The job is never done. Right? Yeah. So what worked a year ago may not work now today, because something has changed in that overall, I call it the entire ecosystem, right? The consumer, the customer, us, our suppliers. That's constantly changing.
That is spoken like a person who truly walks the talk of continuous process improvement. Yes, you're never done, because there's always, it's dynamic, right? Customers are dynamic. Technology is dynamic. So you always have to be adjusting. Maybe this idea of digital, we said transformation is an overused word, but you did shepherd the change from IT as transactional function into this concept of a business within a business. And it's really fascinating how you've evolved IT. So maybe you can share with us the vision around doing that, how you went about doing it, and then the value that is provided to the organization.
Yeah. So if I go back to like 2016, the bulk of what Mars Global Services was essentially, to your point, it was an IT shop. And so we did a reset and said, actually, what we need to do is how do we make it easier for our associates to do their job? We did a study where it was a sample again, but nevertheless, it was quite insightful that said, 40% of someone's time was being spent on just redoing stuff, redoing transactions. And we thought this is such a waste. Think about what that person can do with that 40%. We talk about always overheads. And I'm sure people that are listening in, they know that at work, everyone's always talking about the overheads and how we need to reduce. But think about what is now being wasted here in terms of if somebody has 40% now more time that they can be freed up to focus on innovation and moving forward. So we took a look at it more from the perspective of saying what work exists in our businesses that we can streamline, we can do differently, because the markets are out there to be they're the front end, they're the customer facing, consumer facing. We want them to focus on growth. So we took the operations that essentially could be harmonized. And this is where we came in and used the technology. So it was a good benefit for us, right? That we saw the technology and we linked it up together and said, how now can I encourage this scope of work and automate it? And even now recently, we've been using Gen AI, which has actually taken us to even a next step where it's not just about automating the work that I currently do. It's actually changing how I do the work. So we've gone from upskilling to now reskilling, because the way that you do it, and I think about we have our legal counsel that has to look at all the contracts. We've used now Gen AI to help them to take a look and scan through pages and pages of contracts. And so now she spends more of her time working on how can I do a deal differently that is good for Mars, but also is good for our supplier, because we believe in mutuality. One of our 5 principles is mutuality, and we believe that a shared benefit is an enduring benefit. And so we don't want to have where we win, they lose. It's a win-win. But again, we've really have used it for people to free up the time to think, which is probably innovation itself, because so many of us are busy, right? We say there's no time. So it's really freeing up that time to reflect and actually even ask the question, why do I do what I do? So it's one thing to say, how can I do things better? But there's also the other question, which is, why do I do what I do? And do I even need to do it? Is there something else that needs to take its place, given how the business is evolving and what the business needs?
Yeah, that's a very open-minded and productive mindset. And I really appreciate the example that you gave about generative AI. And I know that you've been on the forefront of embracing Gen AI at Mars and helping to think through how to use it, where to apply it, how to make it safe and not scary to people.
Mm-hmm.
And I really appreciate the example that you gave about your legal associate, because the legal associate was not replaced or displaced by Gen A. It sounds as though the Gen A was used to do lower level tasks that then freed the legal associate up to point out, think strategically, put a lot more thought into deal transaction, and really do higher level, higher order work. And I think that's where Gen AI can benefit organizations. And if we can have more examples like that, it can start to dispel a lot of the hype and fear that I think exists around these vague situations that we talk about, that Gen AI is going to replace attorneys or it's going to replace songwriters or whatever the case might be. And I think that the vision is that it helps to eliminate the need to do lower level tasks and really allows humans to do what they do best, which is think. And that can be a win-win. But you must have faced some resistance in terms of that as an innovative technology that you were bringing forward. So don't know if you have anything more that you can share about how you did that.
Yeah, and so I mean, if I think about Gen AI, first off, I think we have to make sure that we don't go the two extremes, right? So it's not the pet, it's not going to be the nirvana that's going to replace everything, and uh, my life is going to be easy, right? So there's that part of it. The flip side also is, I do think we need to be mindful that Gen AI, especially as it teaches itself, we've got to make sure that we still are in the loop, right? I mean, if I think about most technology today, or up until this point, you needed the human being to either turn off or turn on something, or use it, right? Gen AI, in based on, from what I can understand of it, is it could actually start to teach itself, and it doesn't need a human intervention, right? And so the part that we need to make sure, and this is one that I'm actually really proud of, that Mars has embraced, is that we did set up responsible AI session. We have over 1,000 people at Mars that are part of this. So we self curate, but we've put in a set of principles that we're making sure of what that means, so that when we have there's a Snickers commercial right now where we've got a coach who's essentially, it's all generated through Gen AI, and he'll talk to you. You ask a question, and he'll respond. And we needed to be very mindful of that. At the end, this was supposed to be fun, right? And let's make sure that something doesn't end up going off the rails with it, right? We need to make sure that we're being responsible for it. But to your point about your question of how do you create this environment, I go back to, again, making sure that people understand the why, and addressing, like, what's this for? So if I think about pet care side, right, it's all about creating a better world for pets. And so if I think about the use of AI, we've used it to do in the vet side, the diagnosis, where we feed in thousands and thousands of images, so that now the doctor office can easily determine whether that dog has got an ailment. And so we've gone from where it would take weeks to now where you're immediately in the office and you can determine, yes, there is a problem, because these images are, the millions of images gone in. And so that's been through AI. So again, you need the doctor, right? Mm-hmm. But now he's got the information, or he or she has the information, and they can address and be much more proactive. And almost to a point, you could say you could be preventative. So I think giving our associates a sense of, this is why we're doing it. We're doing it for the cat. We're doing it for the dog. Our four-legged family members. On the side for food or for snack, again, it's we want to bring those moments of joy for people. So when people start to really connect to the purpose, and there also has to be the sense of trust that says, we're not doing this so that we're going to get rid of thousands of people, right? We're big believers in, it's all about, we need to reskill you, because we need still the talent. It's the irony here is, we're living in this world where on the one side, where people are saying it's going to take away jobs, and yet so many companies are looking for people.
Yes,
right. There's a paradox there, right?
Yeah, we've got a labor shortage in a lot of critical talent areas. Well, I just really appreciate the diversity of Gen AI applications that you just described. I mean, something as serious as diagnosing a cancer tumor in a pet, which obviously that happens in humans as well, and there are use cases for human diagnosis, and that's very serious and has medical implications, all the way down the scale of being able to do something fun with the Snickers commercial and everything in between. So I've got to believe that your job leading this Gen AI adoption has been a lot of fun and very interesting, because of the variety of use cases that you've needed to explore.
Absolutely, and it always helps when you bring a bag of M&Ms to the meeting to get people to get
I'm
excited
sure
about it.
you're very popular, Angela. I know we're at the top of the hour. I want to just take one question that has come in from the audience, and that question is, given your experience as an agent of change, innovation in such a large organization, and some of the tips that you gave us about starting small and working with your customers, what tip would you have for someone who's in a large organization wants to get approval to move forward on an innovation project and is running into some resistance? What are one or two or three things that
Yeah.
they can do to troubleshoot that?
Yeah, so I would say ensure that you get those early adopters. So again, be really clear, what's the problem you're trying to solve? Create a minimum viable product, and you've got that a few people that are really highly engaged and energized about it, and so that they can help and also be advocates for you. And when people see the need, and again, it comes back to, it's not just economic return. If I look at one of the initiatives we did, we based it all on improving the experience of our associates, and we actually got the funding for it because it was truly around making, ensuring that our associates had energy, reduce the waste. So I think for me, what has always helped is looking at what's the problem you're trying to define, create that minimum viable product, and get those early adopters, and they'll be your cheerleaders.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. I'm big on problem solving, so I really appreciate that. You have to have something to test or show them, so that's where the MVP comes in. And then if we do a little bit of a network map, we know the 80-20 rule, right? That we can have 80% of the naysayers can well, 20% of the adopters can lead to 80% of
Absolutely.
creating that critical mass for change. So
That's right.
really well said. Well, Angela, congratulations on such a successful career at Mars. I think you've given us all fresh eyes in terms of studying this company and appreciating the growth that it's achieved and the innovation mindset that exists there. And I think that if for people that might want to get in touch with you, I know you've got a LinkedIn profile.
Yeah.
This show will be on your LinkedIn as well as mine. And we hope that folks have enjoyed hearing from you this evening, and we'll have an opportunity to get in touch. And if you've enjoyed this interview with Angela, you'll love the book because she's being profiled in the book. And you'll also enjoy some of the other interviews that we're going to do throughout the year. So, Angela, I just want to thank you very much for joining the Innovators Circle, being part of the LinkedIn Live this evening.
Thank you, Lorraine, and thank you, everyone.